SEC football back on our television screens. 10 days away from kickoff at Faurot Field. Missouri versus Murray State. Arkansas versus Arkansas Pine Bluff. But more importantly, SEC football is back. We've had a wild and rocky offseason leading into 2024, and it's time to let things be settled on the gridiron. But we still have some questions. Several questions to be exact about what might translate into winning or losing seasons in college football this year. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, and welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. And today, let's break down the top 10 biggest questions we still have per program leading into the upcoming season. Make sure that you download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure that you like, rate, review, hit the ring notification down below. That way you don't miss a single episode over here. And of course, hit subscribe because this is your new home for all things SEC. And if you want to check out all of our great written work, make sure that you visit secunfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by Rhoback. Use promo code SECU for 20% off all joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, much more. Look good, feel good. This is upcoming fall at Rhoback.com. So Dave and I decided to go ahead and pine our brains together, which usually is not a good idea, but somehow we made it work. 10 milestone questions that need to be answered in 2024 that ultimately could have a pretty big outlook on the regular season. Dave, I think that we did a pretty good job with this list.
Yeah, I think it was pretty thorough. We hit on a lot of different teams, weren't repetitive, and I thought they were pretty well thought out, fair questions as well.
Let's start off with number 10. Did Tennessee do enough to build around Nico Iamaleava? Now, all offseason, all I've heard so far, Dave, is Tennessee, except not the program, but there's a small letter and an apostrophe. E's quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. Everything about Nico. Nico won the bowl game. Nico looks great in practice. Nico looks great when it comes to building that relationship. He's supposed to be exactly what Hendon Hooker was. But what about the rest of the team? You know that we've heard rumors about this offense looking a lot more dynamic now with number 8 under center. But also they brought in guys like Chris Brazzell, Holden Stays from Notre Dame. They get back a healthy Deontay Thornton. They get back a healthy and a probably more polished version of Brew McCoy. Squirrel White is still there. They bring in Zalance Hurd on the offensive line that now allows him to play left tackle. That's a future NFL left tackle. And I feel like that they feel confident in where their secondary is. But you have to remember, this is still a young quarterback. This is a guy that is making truly his first impact on SEC soil. And he's got a gauntlet to go through at the very beginning of his tenure. Games against NC State and Charlotte, North Carolina. First SEC road test going into Norman, Oklahoma to take on Josh Heupel's former school. There's a lot of pressure riding on this kid going into his first month of college football. And so you have to make sure that you have the right resources allocated behind him. That way he is able to flourish immediately. I don't think for 1 second you or I are doubting Nico's talent. Or we're even doubting that Nico won't be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC this time next year. But every great leading man has a supporting cast. Is the supporting cast in Knoxville good enough to maybe elevate the status of a young quarterback to when those mental mistakes happen, they're able to bail him out of pressure?
No, I agree with you 100% there. Do they have enough? I mean, I would lean towards, if we're answering it without knowing it, I would say for sure. I think they have enough guys. I think they have enough weapons. Brew McCoy coming back is massive.
Number 9. Dave, you want to take this one?
Number 9. Can Florida produce an above-average defense for the first time in 2 seasons? It would be Billy Napier's first. So if you include Oklahoma and Texas in this list, Florida was 14th out of 16 in the SEC and expected points added in 2023 at 0.048. The league average was 0.04. So just remember, the lower, if you're not familiar with this, the lower the number, the better. The lower the number. The league's average was 0.04. Now, factor in, they've added another DC and Ron Roberts, who's coming over from Auburn, who I think did a solid job last year. Gets a bad rap at times, but I think he did an overall good job. I think you got a veteran, younger guy to go along with Austin Armstrong. Combine that with some portal additions, Asa Turner at Washington. I think he's played a lot. He's kind of that energy guy, hold people accountable guy that they need on that back end. Traquez Bridges coming over from Oregon. DJ Douglas has been at Tulane, Alabama. And maybe Carmani McClain comes back from this eye injury, who obviously we're familiar with coming over from Colorado. But I expect some big moves from some people like Jason Marshall, who's back. Devin Moore is back as well. I think he has a chance to take it to the next level. And then Jordan Castile at the safety position. I like the backers. Pup Howard coming over from South Carolina. Miles Graham who is legacy. His dad, Ernest Graham, played running back at Florida in the 90s. And then Shamar James. I like their second level. I think the first level can be solid as well, but I like the back end, obviously, as we go. And I think overall, the missed tackles, the missed assignments, the lining up pre-snap wrong, that has to improve. We know that. But I'd say this defense is an above-average group. I just can't imagine the University of Florida being in a bad defense 3 years in a row when Billy has his best personnel he's had. I like the combination of Rod Roberts. Could be an under-the-radar hire. I think the Gators will be improved, and they're going to have to be if they want to get to 6.
Last season, they averaged 27.6 points allowed per game, over 395 yards of total defense. That's not a winning recipe with some of the teams you're going up against. Ole Miss, Texas, Georgia. I mean, the list goes on and on about who could easily take you to oblivion. And if you have a bad showcase, Billy Napier, even if you brought in DJ Lagway, it may not be enough to save your job. Number 8. Who is number 3 in Alabama's passing game? So for years, you and I know this, they've always had that third elemental receiver, whether it be out of the backfield, whether it be the tight end play. They need to find out who is that guy, because most of the players that did stick around are good. They're just vastly unproven. I mean, you look at guys that are coming on in. Jeremy Bernard, he's got experience playing underneath Kalen DeBoer's system when he was at Washington. Ryan Williams is expected to be the 5-star plus phenom that we all knew coming out of high school. But you now have guys like Kendrick Law, Kobe Pretitz. You got Emmanuel Henderson. How do these guys maybe elevate the status of what we know about this passing attack? Can one of them step up and be that factor, similar to what we saw last year with a guy like Jalen McMillan at Washington, or a year before with Jalen Polk? Or maybe is it going to be the tight end play? We know Alabama loves using their tight ends. Is CJ Dippre going to be the guy? Is it going to be Josh Sivas coming on over? Who takes over as that number 3 role? Because Bernard, if he has as much vertical presence, he's going to command respect by the secondary. They're going to double team him. They're going to take him out of the play as much as possible, make Jalen Milroe play it short. Ryan Williams, I like the kid. I think that he is going to be eventually right alongside the Cam Colemans, the Jeremiah Smiths of the world, but it may not be in 2024. It may be 2025 that we're talking about him. So somebody else has got to step up to be that guy. You've got some veterans on this roster. We've seen before them love this 3 air raid passing attack. Not air raid, but very vertical passing attack out in Seattle. Who's that guy for Tuscaloosa in 2024?
No, I agree. I'd probably lean Ryan Williams. But going number 7, how much improved can the LSU defense be? I think inevitably most people would assume it's going to be better. I mean, it can't get much worse. They finished 78th nationally in points per game, giving up 28 points per game. That's only better than Vanderbilt. That was only better than the boys down in Nashville. That's not going to get it done. That's not the LSU standard, especially defensively. Bring in Blake Baker, who I think was a phenomenal hire. They probably should have kept after O's last year in 2021. He did a phenomenal job developing Damone Clark, who's now gone on and had a pretty good career so far with the Dallas Cowboys. And I think Blake Baker, this hire, LSU was never going to fire Brian Kelly, but I think this kind of stabilized his tenure and not make him go off to an early kind of retirement. Him and Bo Davis coming over Blake Baker. I think this was a massive hire, not only on the field, but off the field. Now, specifically to 2023, this specific team on defense, they're going to be more aggressive, which I think is a fantastic idea. I think you're going to have to be. Now, are they going to give up some explosive plays? Absolutely. But I think you take the good with the bad. I think you're fine. You're going to give up some explosive plays, and it's going to be bombs over Baghdad at times. You're going to give up. You see it. Caleb Jackson's busted a few 75-yard runs in their scrimmage plays. So I think they're going to give up that. But they're also going to force some turnovers and some negative plays as well. So I think it'll even out. I mean, last year, they were bad in turnovers as well. They only had 14 turnovers in 13 games last season. That gives Tyrann Mathieu nightmares at night. But they will undoubtedly be better. But by how much? I don't think you can hide that interior defensive line against good teams like Ole Miss and Alabama. I think that is what it is. But add in that, I think that leads to a little bit of inconsistency at times. And there's definitely a ceiling on this improvement. But I just feel like overall I have a good I have a good feel on the front 7, how they're going to be with Harold Perkins. I mean, Blake Baker can't get it done. I don't know how. I think Harold Perkins does take it to that next level finally. But the big question mark, the ceiling is going to be determined by how well Ashton Stamps and Sage Ryan hold down those corner spots. It's going to be improved. I don't think it'll be championship level improved. But again, the ceiling is going to be determined by how good those two corners, Ashton Stamps and Sage Ryan, can hold up on the back end.
Three stats to give you: 114th last year in explosive plays allowed, 117th in opposing third down percentage, and 118th in passing yards per game. Yeah, you're going to need your cornerbacks to have to step up and basically go full Leonidas 300 against some of these wide receivers. And again, you got great teachers. Sometimes the best teachers get average grades up to stellar grades. And maybe that's what you get with Blake Baker and Bo Davis this year. Number 6. Did Kentucky fix the BBW? Get your mind out of the gutter, ladies and gentlemen. Stop with that. I know where you're going. No, the big BW is the big blue wall. They were always known for the time underneath Mark Stoops for having solid offensive line play. They've always been good with the center, with the tackle spots. They've always felt like that this is a team that can run the football, can keep the quarterback upright. The problem has been, do they have the right pieces in the backfield, not the pieces up front? Well, last year, the offensive line was abysmal. Devin Leary did not help his case, but him being a very pocket awareness quarterback made him a statue behind the line of scrimmage. He wasn't able to maneuver outside. Well, you bring in Jalen Farmer, the offensive lineman from Florida, and you bring in Gerald Mincey, who has had experience at Florida, has had experience at Tennessee. Maybe Lexington is the home away from home that he's always needed. You also return 2 starters. Is that enough? Is that enough to feel confident now with a more, I would say, mobile quarterback that maybe isn't going to tuck and run as much as you want him to, but definitely will evade the pressure outside the pocket, step up and deliver clean strikes in Brock Vandagriff? I truly believe that the style of offense that Brock Vandagriff runs, there will be plays designed for him, similar to Bo Nix when he was playing at Auburn and then when he was playing in Will Stein's offense at Oregon. And it was a big reason why he got to go to New York City, be in the Heisman finalist conversation, and eventually be a first-round pick. I could see similarities with that because of the way Bush Hamden likes to utilize his quarterbacks. Got to remember, comes on over from Boise State. Who was his quarterback last year? The guy that's now slinging it around in Fayetteville. So there's a reason to believe that the rushing attack is going to be potent. My main question is, you're not going to have Chip training for the start of the season. You don't know what you got in Sumo, and you don't know what you got in most of the guys behind him. So there are going to be plays where you are trusting this quarterback to be your go-to bread and butter. And it comes in multiple ways, including a young but very talented and very underrated wide receiver room in the country. And also, I think a much more improved defense. If you have an offensive line that is much more stable and secure, we are talking about Kentucky once again following the trajectory of probably being in that 10-2 conversation, 10-3, 9-3, whatever it is at the end of the year. They know how to do it every 3 seasons. This feels like a year where maybe they get it done again.
Yeah, you add back, they get Wolf back, Eric Wolford, who's been in Alabama the last 2 years. Last time Kentucky was really the big blue wall standard when he was there. Also, they go against probably the best interior defensive lineman every day in practice in Deion Walker. But coming in at number 5, how quickly can the Oklahoma offensive line gel? Bill Bedenbaugh, one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, is going to get the most. Cole mentioned it when we were talking about LSU. Like some of these, I think there's a few coaches in the country, in the league, that's going to maximize the talent they have. It may not be much, but they're going to get the most out of it. I think Bedenbaugh is in that conversation of coaches. They're banged up, though, from reading reports. They finalized their last scrimmage, I think, Thursday. Maybe yesterday was their final scrimmage. But Branson Hickman, SMU transfer, coming over he's in the competition to win the starting job. He was out. Jake Taylor, a depth guy, he's out. They will be tested for 3 straight weeks starting September 14th against Tulane. You heard me right. I mean, Oklahoma fans remember in 2021, Tulane took them down to the wire. I'm not saying Tulane's going to win the game, but you go Tulane to Tennessee to open up league play and at Auburn 3 straight weeks before you head into your first bye week before you go to the Cotton Bowl to face Texas. You're going to know where you're at after that offensive line-wise. There's going to be so much film and so many different looks those defensive coordinators are going to give you. I mean, you're playing really good defensive coordinators. You're playing good teams. I mean, off the top of my head, can't name Tulane's, but I know John Sumrall is a good defensive coach. I know Tennessee, Rodney Garner in that defensive front is going to be fine. And then obviously get DJ Durkin at Auburn. But feels like there's only 2 certains on this offensive line right now. Fabechi Nwowu, the right guard transfer from North Texas, is going to man that spot. And Jacob Sexton's going to be starting somewhere. Maybe at guard, it may be a tackle, but you can count those 2 for the 5. The rest is a total toss-up. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just an unknown right now. But there's really not much more to go into than I think this is just a fair question. We will know how the Sooners shape up really as a team, I feel like, but specifically the offensive line after that 3-week stretch of Tulane at home, Tennessee to open up league play in Norman, and then heading to the Plains at Jordan-Hare. We're going to find out real quick what Oklahoma is going to look like on the offensive line.
Case in point, I've already said I believe that Oklahoma behind Jackson Arnold can be a 10-win program, easily make it to the college football playoff with the personnel that they got, and more importantly, with that stellar defense. But you win in the trenches, and right now, on one side, they're going to be able to attack. The other side, we don't know if they're going to be able to protect. And when you have that kind of conversation, that's why some people that are saying that they're going to go 6-6, they may end up not eating crow by the season's end. Number 4, Collin Klien and Connor Weigman. If they're on the same page, what is Texas A&M? I already know that their defensive front is going to be more secure than the vault at Wayne Enterprises. It's going to be that locked up. You're not going to have any questions whatsoever when it comes to guys like Nick Scorton, guys like they brought in such as B.J. Allen, guys that you have such as Cassius Howell, especially when you look at Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart. They're going to be good. Solomon DeShields has been phenomenal from everyone I've spoken to. Torian York is underrated. But that offense last year was abysmal multiple times. It has been for a while. It got stale as dry old day-old bread underneath Jimbo Fisher's play calling. You bring him by Petrino. Speculation that even though Jimbo did give up the play calling, he didn't truly give up the play calling. So now you bring in Connor Weigman's new guy, and this is another one, which is you bring in Collin Klein. Collin Klein last year had one of the top-ranked rushing attacks in all of college football. It had been there for a hot minute. And also, they did lose Reuben Owens, but they still have 2 very good running backs. They still have Amari Daniels. They still have Le'Veon Moss. Le'Veon Moss last year was the lead dude. My main question is, with all the weaponry that we have, all the things that you know belong inside a College Station, from Silas Allen, from Ja'Day Walker, from you had Moose Muhammad, Noah Thomas, Donovan Green's back. If you're seeing eye to eye with the quarterback that at one point was viewed as the next big name and still can be in College Station, which is a big deal, are we actually now underselling Texas A&M? Because all the pieces are there for them to be successful. The offensive line, they feel like they're doing a lot better job underneath Adam Cushing. If you get the quarterback and the OC on the right page, even though that one loves to run the option, one's more so known for his pocket awareness, that was a big selling point for A&M. It still feels like at this point, you're in a really, really good spot where 9 wins is possible, 10 wins is possible. Marching on into multiple atmospheres and getting upsets, it's not off the table. I'm not going to do the wagon before the horse like I always do, but this feels like a team that probably, more than likely, has a shot of making a big impact.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the big question mark, how that Collin Klein run game with Connor Weigman, because that's not really one of his strengths. Interesting how to fit that in, but it starts up front. Like you said, they got to get that rolling. Adam Cushing. I mean, I think changing offensive line coaches, from hearing Steve Adazio was a problem there last year. So I think that'll really help. You're right. I think it can only be improved from that perspective. But I think that's going to determine the ceiling for the A&M season.
Number 3, is 5 games enough for the Auburn freshmen to catch up to speed? So one of the biggest blessings and curses for Auburn is they get to start at home for the regular season. They got games against everybody until all the way up till, what is it? Oklahoma at home. So Arkansas.
Oklahoma, then I think they go bye week, Georgia at Georgia.
Then Georgia. Yeah. So they're going to have a shot to go 5-0 at home. They're also going to have a lot of freshmen, I think, make a major impact. And I know that we've already talked about Cam Coleman, but I feel like Perry Thompson could get involved. I feel like several defensive linemen could get involved. I feel like several secondary players can get involved. The big blessing is that they're going to be playing in front of a home atmosphere. That will keep their confidence at an all-time high. That will boost morale. That will allow them to feel comfortable because of it's a field that they practice on. It's an area that they know. They get to get an understanding of what college football is all like. But the thing is, after that home stretch, you got 4 games on the road. You're not even home for the month of October. That's a big deal when you look at where this is in the heart of the schedule. And so you're really asking these freshmen to probably already elevate and graduate to sophomore level consistency, because of what if you need one of them to step up big? What if a Keandre Lambert-Smith injury happens? Now you say, hey, Perry Thompson, we need you to live up to the Cam Coleman hype. We need you to be that guy, because we have a real good shot of now actually getting to 9+ wins, maybe sneaking as a backdoor 10-win team into the college football playoff race. We feel really good. And so they're young players. The good news is that being in front of fans, being in an atmosphere that is really behind your back, has your best interest in mind. It's always a blessing, but after that becomes the test. So it's like having a couple, like we talk about Ole Miss having some a preseason for the first 6 games. you have the best environment possible if you're implementing young players into your system, playing in front of the hometown crowd. Like, that's just the bottom line. Can you get everyone up to speed to when October rolls around, you're in a good spot and you have nothing to worry about?
Yeah, couldn't ask for a tougher first road game to get that operation right.
Yeah,
there. That'll be interesting. But so you said, you're kind of getting your feet wet, but it comes with the good and bad. But coming in at number 2, what does the quarterback tiering in the league, in the SEC, look like come the end of the year, come November? Like, what are we talking about? I'm not going to rank them right here, but like, what do we say? Where does this shake out at? I got 10 dudes listed here that I'm not adding in the dudes that are leaving, and I'm not really factoring in Lenore Sellers or Diego Pavia in this. But the guys like Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Brady Cook, Connor Weigman, Garrett Nussmeier, Nico Amalevea, Jackson Arnold, Taylon Green. What are we saying? Like, how are we sectioning? How are we grouping these guys that come the last month of the season or the end of the year? Like, I think that we kind of know Carson Beck's kind of the guy. It's QB1, I feel like, by most draft pundits, most people who watch a lot of film going into the year. But Quinn Ewers, can he play a whole season? If he does, I expect big numbers. Jalen Milroe, can he take that next step? He has a quarterback-friendly head coach. Nick Sheridan does a phenomenal job of having relationships with his players. I think that relationship's going to be better there than Tommy Rees. It's not a shot towards Tommy Rees. I just think it is what it is. Jackson Dart, going into his 3rd year in the Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss Jr. system. I expect a big year. Cole, I know you feel the same way. He's got a plethora of weapons, best offensive line depth they have. They should be really good. Brady Cook, again, Kirby Moore, Eli Drinkwitz, another year in their system. He has weapons. Connor Weigman, I think he's going to be key to A&M season. Can he be consistent? Offensive line's going to help him. Garrett Nussmeier, limit the turnovers, but I do think you see some explosive plays with him. We know Nico. That was one of your points. Do they have enough weapons around him? I think Nico himself could be a little shaky early because he's a first-time starter in the league. But we'll see. Jackson Arnold, same. What are we saying about some of these new starters in the league, to my point? Like, what are we saying about Nico and Jackson Arnold heading into 25? Because they'll both be back. What are we saying about those guys? Connor Weigman potentially could be back as well. Taylon Green, Bobby Petrino's, as we hear Sam Pittman and Bobby Petrino said, handpicked by Bobby Petrino from Boise State. Could he be a guy that kind of takes that step? Reminds me a little bit of Logan Thomas when he was playing quarterback before he moved to tight end, but when he was at Virginia Tech. So I think there's a lot of potential here at this quarterback, and I'm far between these quarterbacks, about 10 or 11 of them that I'm keeping an eye on to see how the ceiling is of this league and who's – because, I mean, you can make it – we talked about it yesterday. We were talking about it on the Texas Sports Unlimited show yesterday, Cole. Like, it's not a great quarterback class. Does someone come out of nowhere like Jalen Milroe and just develop under Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan? We're like, damn, all right, he's QB1 now. So I'm excited to see that. What does the quarterback tiering look like towards the end of the year?
Not every time will you see the college football playoff be represented by the best quarterbacks in the game, but oftentimes you will see in the SEC, the one representative that's going to the dance, they usually have one, if not the best gunslinger in the conference. And that's going to be a big deal. That's going to be a really big deal.
You know this just was I do. It didn't used to be like that, but your quarterback's now got to be a top 3 player in your roster. If you want to go win a championship, he's got to be a dude. Now, I think Stetson Bennett may be an exception to that, but more times than not, if you're going to go win a national championship, your quarterback's got to be a dude for you.
More importantly, for you to get into the college football playoff, especially with the cannibalization that could go on in the SEC, there's got to be a clear separation when it comes to QB1 and QB2.
And then coming in at number 1, thought this was an interesting one. I still don't know why this has not been shaked out yet or determined, but what are the league tiebreakers? Remember, no more divisions. First time since 1991. We have not had divisions when Arkansas and South Carolina came into the league in 92. Inevitable. I think it's inevitable. Cole, I think you agree. We're going to have multiple 6-2 teams in league play. I think we're going to have multiple. I mean, there's not a lot of common opponents between those teams that I think are in that 2-loss, 6-2 type team, like Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, and LSU. Like, Missouri doesn't play Ole Miss. They do play Bama. They don't play Tennessee, and they don't play LSU. Ole Miss, Bama don't play. Ole Miss, Tennessee don't play. Ole Miss, LSU do. I mean, you got a little mixture of Alabama, LSU plays 2 or 3 of them, but there's just not a lot. So what is that tiebreaker? I mean, head-to-head's obviously the first one. I think everybody agrees with that. Number 2, I liked our guy from Saturday Down South. Connor O'Garaga put out an article. I thought he did a pretty good job of that. Number 2, he had in his own tiebreaker, if he made up it, total victories versus SEC teams that finish with a winning record would be a tiebreaker. I'm like, all right, I like that. Strength of schedule. I mean, Ole Miss, Missouri, heading into the season probably wouldn't be real jacked about that. But I do think that's a fair one. Number 3, he had total conference wins among teams beaten in the SEC play. So it's essentially like if South Carolina goes 5-3 and you beat South Carolina, you get 5. You're essentially adding up all the wins you beat in the league. I'm fine with that. Number 3. Didn't really agree with his number 4 one. I don't like scoring margin, but I see why people do. I don't know. I just think people running up the score on people to determine if they're getting to a championship game or where they fit. I'm not for that. I think 4th should just be at that point. If we're getting to 4, just go by the highest team in the CFP ranking at that point. But I think 1 through 4, obviously head-to-head, total victories versus SEC teams that finished with a winning record, total conference wins among teams beaten in SEC play at number 3, and then I think CFP coming in at 4. But, I mean, dude, we're about to kick off here in about 10, 11 days, or what, 10, 11 days?
10 days. 10 days.
I mean, between, like you said, the Arkansas and Missouri games, and we don't even know any of these tiebreakers. Like, it's interesting. I saw Greg Sankey said they had about 8 different ones they've gone through, but, I mean, inevitably, this is going to happen. Not everybody plays everybody.
The biggest question mark is if we're going to have proper representation in the college football playoff. We know that there's going to be people griping that there's so much SEC level of play going into a 12-team format. But at the same time, who are the right 5? Who are the right 6? And the way you have the answer to that is tiebreakers. The thing that you brought up, Dave, that's not as prevalent in this situation. You got to have tiebreakers to maybe make it to Atlanta, but you also have to have tiebreakers for where you're going to be viewed in the pecking order for the College Football Playoff Committee. And also, does the College Football Playoff Committee care about the tiebreakers enough to where maybe they feel like a team that doesn't win the tiebreaker is still better than the team that did? And so we catapult them to say number 11, and the team that won the tiebreaker comes in at number 13. There's so much unknown when it comes to that aspect of the game and when it comes to that role and how it will determine not just playoff appearances, but also major appearances for these coaches to be able to set the standard moving forward. You don't have an answer. And when you don't have an answer this late in the process, it's not a good look for anybody involved.
Totally agree. Totally. I don't know how they got this far.
Let's go through it one more time. Number 10, does Tennessee have enough weapons to break out with Nico Iamaleava? Number 9, can Florida produce an above-average defense? Offense is there. Defense, we don't know. Number 8, who's the number 3 for Alabama's passing attack? Ryan Williams, we already know about him. We know about a guy in Jeremy Bernard. Who's that number 3? Number 7, how much has LSU's defense improved? They got the record. They got the offense. Do they have the defense? Number 6, did Kentucky fix the BBW? Get your mind out of the gutter. The big blue wall is what we're talking about here. Number 5, can Oklahoma's offensive line be fixed before SEC play? Number 4, Connor Weigman and Collin Klien, are they a match made in heaven out of Texas A&M? Number 3, 5 games at home for the Auburn freshmen. Is that enough to get them up to pace before a daunting month of October? Number 2, what's the quarterback rankings? At the end of the day, we all know that QB is the reason why you win championships. Are we going to see the best ones go into the dozen dance? And speaking of the dozen dance at number 1, tiebreakers. Who the hell ends up going to Atlanta anyways? That's going to do it for us here on SEC Unfiltered. We're 10 days out from the start of the college football season. Make sure you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show and do yourself a favor while you're there. Leave a 5-star review because you love this type of content. Also, make sure that you hit subscribe down below. That way you don't miss a single episode of SECU because this is now your home for all things SEC. And to keep up with the number 1 source for all things surrounding your favorite conference and much, much more, visit SECunfiltered.com. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks, later.